This weekend, ex-rugby player Gareth Thomas was the victim of a homophobic attack. Now, although he did report it to the police, he decided he would prefer to talk to his attacker rather than have them prosecuted. So he chose restorative justice. Very interesting. He says because he believes that the person would have got more out of that than facing him and being asked, why did you do this to me? Tell me why. And he did get an apology, and he felt that for this particular person and this particular situation, that was enough. But restorative justice generally, Jane, what do you think?
For me, it would depend on the age and the crime. So in Gareth's case, it was a 16-year-old. The picture we used there isn't the picture he put up. He did actually have cuts on his face, which kind of worries me slightly, because I think it's all very well and good to say, OK, apologise and look me in the eye and don't do it again. But I think you have to look behind the reasons why somebody does that. So I think it's fine in theory, but in practice you then have to say, right, OK, now we're going to work on you as to why you did this and make sure that you don't do it again.
So you still believe that they should go through the judicial process?
I don't think in that situation particularly, but in some situations, yes. I think there has to be a punishment that fits the crime, but then when they're doing their punishment, then you could possibly, if you want to, bring in restorative justice, and that could mean meeting your victims if they want to meet you and look at you and say, why did you do this to me? But also rehabilitation within prison, because we know it doesn't work if you just lock them up and then let them out again.
I think, it can be used for any type of crime at any stage of the criminal justice system, including alongside a prison sentence. So I'm with you. That I think if a crime is violent, particularly, against a person, then that should be a prison sentence to me, because, you have to have a zero-tolerance policy on that. However, I think it's very powerful if you have to be sitting opposite the person you attacked and listen to what that did to them, how they felt. Because I think particularly if it's younger people, it's all very well being brave in a gang, isn't it? And all going around thinking you're the big I am. But taken away from that, alone in a room, sitting opposite the person that you've tried to beat to a pulp.
And I think, when it's a non-violent crime, say a burglary, in a house, they might just think of it as something like, well, say it was a house with money, they've got this and that. To actually sit down opposite those people and talk to the people and how they felt, the vulnerability of people coming into their home, how that would affect the children. I very much agree. I also have, my sister was married to a policeman, and his frustration was huge, because of course you would get these young people, not necessarily young people, but a lot of them were young people who were terrifying old ladies. There was one where somebody was held at knife point on a bus, and the fact that could ruin her mental health the rest of her life. And of course they would get picked, and they would get nothing more than a rap on the knuckles. And I think that sometimes if the justice system isn't going to incarcerate them, then at least this type of restorative justice could be used at least in place or alongside of that, for sure, to realise again what impact that's going to have on that person.
I mean, you're right. It's about humanising the victim, isn't it? It's about accepting that this is a human being. And when you make somebody go face to face with them, they then realise, oh, I feel that impact. I often think it about even the smallest of things. It doesn't necessarily have to be a crime, but even on social media, when certain people are saying horrible things to one another, even to be able to go, well, OK, then, say that to somebody's face, feel that reaction.
Because they're anonymous.
Feel it in real life. You know, like you said, if you're going to rob somebody's house, you're not thinking about the human behind it. You're not thinking about the personability, that there is an actual person.
I mean, obviously, we're in London right now, and we have a huge issue with knife crime that we're talking about all the time. Other cities in England and Wales have huge issues with knife crime, and it seems to be this endless sort of circular debate about what to do with it. Well, I'll tell you what to do.
Have zero tolerance.
No, go to Scotland. So Scotland in 2005... So Glasgow was named as something like the murder capital of Europe, and they decided to do something about it. And they introduced these things called VRUs, violence reduction units. First thing they did was increase stop and search. Second thing they did was triple sentencing for knife crime.
Wow.
And it cut the figures literally overnight. I mean, the effect was huge. But then the third thing they did, which I think is the most important thing, rather than treat it as a crime issue just for the police, they call it a public health issue. So once they're serving their sentence, they then go, right, why did you do this? And how are we going to stop you from doing it again? And what they do is they discover that these kids go into gangs because if they live in an area, if they're not in a gang, they get attacked. So they rehouse them. They rehouse them somewhere else. They train them in a skill. They go into schools. Bereaved mothers who've lost their sons to knife crime go and give talks. There's a group called Medics Against Violence. They go in with a really horrible film saying, this is us operating on someone who's been stabbed. It works. Let's do it in England and Wales.
And also, in a way, that sort of leads us... It's sort of a parallel to... Didn't you go to the restaurant at the...
Oh, at Brixton Prison, yeah, the Clink.
To the Clink.
Yep.
Where, for good behaviour, they're
Amazing.
rewarded with you know, the prisoners are the chefs and the waiters,
Yep.
and they all recognise the girls, and so they all...
Big Loose Women fans. Yeah, it was amazing.
I think you're right. I think it can't just be one thing.
Yeah.
I think all of those things work together, don't they?
It's a collection.
Well, very interesting, and we wish Gareth well, obviously.